Hello and welcome to Landscape Photography World. I'm Grant Swinburne and I'll be your host on this show discussing the world of landscape photography. This time I'm talking to Sarina Jackson about her landscape photography journey. Living in Randwick in Sydney's south, Sarina is an amazing photographer and a founder of In Focus Women. We discuss that group and how it's grown into a worldwide phenomenon, with a book showcasing incredible female photographers' work being released soon. We also look deeper into the importance of photography for mental health and well-being. I hope you enjoy the show. Hi Sarina, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing?
I'm really good, Grant. How are you?
Oh, pretty good for lockdown. How's that affecting your creativity? How are you staying motivated?
Oh, I'm not, to be honest. Lockdown is killing me. I live in Randwick, which is great because it's close to all the amazing places to go shoot. But I live in a house with 3 cats, 3 dogs, 3 other humans, and my time out of the house is me shooting, and so I'm really struggling with this lockdown. So my creativity feels like it's at 0 or minus, which is terrible.
That's no good. When was the last time you got out to shoot? Just before lockdown, or was it a couple of weeks?
And it was probably a week or 2 before lockdown, and I think it was Bronte, and you know what? I was there and I was like, oh God, I'm back at Bronte again. And now I would give anything to go and shoot at Bronte.
How do you think the pandemic's changed your attitude towards travelling and photography? Has it changed?
Look, it's really interesting because it's funny. I bought I invested in a motorhome in December last year because I thought,
nice.
Yeah, I thought international travel is going to be something that we're not going to see for a little while, given what happened last year. And I thought, best, I'm going to travel Australia and I'm going to take so many photos. I'm going to be so amazing. I started the 365 where I was going to post a photo every day for a year. Yep. And I was just going to have so much stock and amazing photos from all over Australia that I was going to take from my motorhome. Yes, no.
Motorhome's still parked in the driveway.
The motorhome is spider-webbed out the front of my house at the moment, and the neighbours don't like it.
Never mind. I guess one of the things that and one of the main reasons why I wanted to talk to you, and I'll be talking to your partner in crime in this, Steph Vella, shortly, hopefully. You've been involved in Focused Women. Can you tell us what that is and how it's going?
I can. So Steph and I met Steph from doing a private workshop with her a couple of years ago, and while we were talking, I was a bit of a beginner as a photographer, and we were talking about how every time we turned up to a meet or a workshop or something, it was mostly males, and it's not a male bashing session. It was just that it's a very different feeling, and also a sort of element of safety. If I'm going to rock up somewhere at 3 a.m. to do a bit of astro, or 4 or 5 a.m. to do a sunrise, and I'm the only one there, it can sometimes it's a bit of safety as well.
Yeah, no, I can understand it can be quite confronting that, you know, particularly if you, as you say, if you're the only female in the group.
Well, I remember being down at Ivor Row before sunrise, so it would have been about 5 a.m. Probably about a year ago, or maybe, you know what, time stands still with COVID, but I'm standing there setting everything up and I'm looking around and I'm just watching the waves, and then suddenly there's just this cigarette smoke scent that comes across my nose, and I'm like, I'm not the only one here. How is that the case? And it happened to be a group of sort of, I don't know, weren't teenagers, but they were older, and they'd obviously been out all night and they were sort of sitting there, and so they were no harm. But for a couple of minutes, I just felt this fear of who was there and what was going on. So
yeah.
But so Steph and I started talking. We thought that it would be a really great opportunity of just starting something local So really something Sydney based. So we thought In Focus Women was a good name, and we started and it's grown worldwide. We've just ticked over, I think, about 36,000 tagged photos. And we're getting people or ladies from all over the world who have sort of come in and said, this is a really great environment. It's a great space. We hold meetups. We hold online meetups because obviously not everybody's in Sydney.
Sure.
We hold workshops. It's just sort of become something which we never thought was going to be, but it is.
Yeah, I'm really impressed with the number of people that have joined up, because I've been watching it. I don't know when I first started noticing it, but the other side of it is the quality of the work, and that's it's some of it is just absolutely mind blowing.
Because I post, I do a photo every morning and every night. So, and I see everything that's been tagged, and I see everybody that's, and I get blown away. So one of the beautiful things about it is it's actually inspiration for me. So I just see this immense talent come through my feed, that they've tagged us and they've gone out of their way, and it's literally Peru or, anywhere in Europe. It's people from all over the world who are tagging it, and I sort of sit here from my place going, I don't feel very creative at the moment. And then I look and there's 60 tagged photos, and I'm going to flick through it, and they're all amazing. And it is very inspirational to see the talent that is there.
Yeah, no, I think it's amazing, and I mean, as I say, I think it's a really good idea. I've got 3 daughters, so I mean, I've personally never experienced that sort of fear of walking around, but I know talking to them, talking to my wife, and so forth, there is definitely, particularly in big cities, a fear that you could be assaulted, and I guess. Hopefully you never have, but have you ever experienced the effects of any of that, or any difficulties about photography being so male dominated?
Well, look, I haven't in photography wise. I mean, certainly in other areas that's a whole other story, but in photography wise, I felt uncomfortable a couple of times, but I've heard lots of stories. I think we were recently talking to some ladies, and one lady sort of turned around and said, this man just sort of came up and started taking lenses out of my bag and checking them out. And I mean, that's not okay. That's just sort of not an environment. But I mean, I'm pretty thick skinned, so I think about where I'm going to go before I go. And there's plenty of places that I won't go unless I'm with somebody else. But there are a lot of stories, and there's a lot of women who feel the same way.
Yeah. And I mean, to me, it's a sad indictment on our society that, that women feel that way. But, I think things like In Focus Women and so forth, I think that really gives an opportunity to sort of tilt the balance a little bit. And, as you said, you've obviously communicated with quite a few of these women in the past around their experiences in photography. And, I just think it's a fantastic initiative and something that's, really admirable. And I'm totally blown away every time I look in the feed at the posts that are coming through. There's just some fantastic stuff there.
I have I do something similar to you. I know you do your sort of Friday features, and I sort of do that every now and again on mine. But I do that through In Focus Women regularly, and we sort of do the stories that is 40 or 50 sort of a week that goes through, literally because we can't feature everyone, and there's just so many. And we recently put out, this is for an exhibition. So Steph and I sort of sat down and we said, let's do an exhibition. We've got this amazing gallery in Darlinghurst and it's going to be great. It's going to be really small because we thought that it was going to be pretty small. So we put out this exhibition and we put out that we were going to do a book with the exhibition. We were so inundated with photos from all over the world and for both the exhibition and the book. Sadly, we had to postpone the exhibition because of the lovely COVID Sydney lockdown that we're in at the moment. But we did the book, and we originally priced the book on sort of 40 pages, thinking that we'd get 10 people, we'll put 4 pages, 4 pictures in. We're at 112 pages.
Wow.
And everyone has got one photo, and it's crazy. And we had to cut it off. And we said, right, you go in the next one. And they're literally ladies from all over the world. Yeah. We had to chase up a lady today from Brazil.
So is that published and released yet, or are you?
No, it's being printed as we speak.
Brilliant. Okay, I'll
definitely. It will be out soon.
Definitely keep an eye out for that. I wouldn't mind that. I mean, I kind of collect photography books. You can't see a lot on the shelf on the shelves here behind me. These are the novels. I've got another bookcase elsewhere in the house, which is where all the quarto size books hang out.
Well, this was our first one, and we're just constantly blown away by the support that we've received, and I guess this shows that there's a need for something like that. There's nothing really the same as what we're doing, and I just love, when you feature someone and they email you straight back going, oh my God, I just woke up and I saw this and this has actually made my day because of this and this reason, which is also, it's the little messages that you get back. It's the change the difference that it makes to them. And it might not be someone with 50,000 followers. It might be someone with 200 followers that changes their way of viewing themselves.
Absolutely,
and as an artist, I think.
Definitely. I mean, I sometimes, look at some of my work, particularly from some of the early days, and you kind of look at it and you go, it's okay, it's but until you actually sort of get it out there and get other people commenting on it, you've got no idea, and I think every artist sort of goes through that. Oh, I'm no good. My work's not good enough, etc. You do go through that, and the thing that I've spoken to a few people on a number of platforms about their work, and when they've sort of expressed. You sometimes see these posts that somebody's obviously hurting somewhere. And I tend to reach out to some of those people and just sort of say, look, what you're doing is actually amazing, and what what I'm seeing of your work, it's as good as anything else that I've seen, and if you can give somebody a bit of a boost like that, it makes a massive difference,
A perfect example is there's a lady who started following us really early on. And she was posting photos with her phone, clearly, and I'm not certainly speaking out of school, but they weren't. She was definitely a beginner. And then in the last 18 months, she's gone from being this beginner to clearly thinking about what she's doing, taking, and then the photos that you can literally, if I went
see
through
the progression,
progression from start to finish has been unbelievable. And I message her regularly and I just sort of say, what you're doing is amazing. This is fantastic. Keep going. And that to me is what this is about.
Yeah, I mean, if you can find a community of like-minded people that you can, that you're going to get some encouragement. But I mean, you don't want, I guess, facile pats on the back. You want good, honest feedback. And I think I said in my first episode where I talked a bit about myself, One of the best things that I did was actually join up with some forums where uh, constructive criticism was a big part of that forum, and a big part of the purpose why I joined was somewhere where I could actually go and say, all right, because I mean I've been taking photos, since I was 10, not seriously for a long time, but I take them for my own enjoyment. I don't take. I quite frankly don't care what someone else thinks of them, because if I create, and as I say, I'll look at some of my early work and I go, oh, it's rubbish compared to what I can do now. But then I didn't know then what I know now, and it's that honing of the craft and honing of the ability that. And that journey from that beginner sort of phase through to where you're starting to, and I don't call myself a master of photography in any way, shape or form, but I know my work is okay and it can stand up next to some other photographers' work, and if people like it, that's great. I like it. That's the main thing.
You know what? That's what it's about. So we do this for us, and we do this because, I mean, it's not my livelihood, it's not your livelihood, and it's pretty much not most people's livelihood. It's certainly some people's livelihood. If it was my livelihood, I wouldn't get the enjoyment out of it that I get. It wouldn't be my sort of meditation / self-leveling that I get from just going out and being me. I don't necessarily like going out with a lot of people shooting. I just like hanging with myself and the element, and doing it with people now and again is great, but that process that you forget everything. It's just you and nature and sunrise.
It's the concentration that you got to put into it. You've got to focus, pardon the pun, but you've got to focus on what you're doing. You've got to focus on your composition. You've got to focus on, have I got my settings right? You've got to focus on, what's the light doing? Do I have to change my settings? Do I put a filter on? Do I leave it off? What sort of shot am I going to do? And it's all of that thinking that goes on that just clears your mind of everything else. And I get the same feeling also when I bring stuff back and process it, because it's then, okay, what am I trying to achieve with this shot? And there's some things which I posted one actually, which was a pano. What was yesterday, I think. Anyway, it was shot down at Mollymook. It was shot some years ago,
which is one of my favourite places in the world.
Oh, same here. I love it. I love the South Coast. I love anywhere on the coast, to be honest.
Yes. The High Coast, then the South Coast. That's
but it was a fairly simple, portrait mode. I think it was 5 or 6 shot pano from where the sun was just peeking over the horizon, getting that lovely side light, some nice shadows across the beach and everything. I managed to even leave my camera bag in the shot, where I'd had a bigger camera bag than the one that I've got now, and I left that in shot. And I didn't clone it out, didn't do anything to it. I did a few contrast adjustments. I adjusted the saturation down a bit because it was a little bit oversaturated in the reds and yellows. But beyond that, I didn't do anything to it other than stitch it together. And, I got some really good feedback. I didn't think it was that great a shot at the time that I took it, because it was, I'll try and record this pano, and but it's sat on it has literally sat on my hard disk now for nearly 5 years, and I haven't touched it. Finally, in lockdown, because I've got time and nothing else to shoot and nothing else to look at, because I'm constantly going, what's the next thing, but it was really interesting just to bring it out and do nothing to it virtually, just some contrast and a bit of saturation and a downward saturation, not upwards, and came out with a nicest shot. I did, as I say, I posted it. I didn't think much of it, but I got some nice comments, and people enjoyed it.
Again, look. There's a lot. Social media is it's a beast. It's a world of its own, and a lot of us live by it, and a lot of us don't. It's funny. I post photos that I absolutely love, and no one likes them, and then I post one exactly like what you just said, and this is all right.
It's B-roll. Yeah.
Yeah, sort of got to feel like I've got to get something up, so I go do it, and then it goes nuts, and you're sort of sitting there going, well, why?
What do people like about that I don't? But that's the thing. It's a very subjective, art form. All art is subjective, I guess. But if people like it, they like it. If they don't, they don't. It's just the way that it is.
Therein lies your question. Is it landscape photography? Is it a taking of a real place, or is it art? There's a whole big esoteric question we could spend hours answering, I'm sure.
Well, yeah, I was actually listening to another podcast the other day where a particular photographer / artist, whatever you want to call them, and they're quite open about the fact that a lot of their work they use composites. So, but one of the things that they're very clear on is when they post it on social media, it's a composite.
I was listening to the same podcast the other day.
Yeah, but this is a composite. Do not try and find this because it's not real.
Yeah.
And I think if you're honest and you're open about it, it's okay. It's when I think you're trying to deceive people into saying, yeah, well, the moon really was that big. Well, yeah, was it?
My Photoshop skills aren't that talented, so everybody knows
and that's the thing. You do have to be, pretty nifty with your Photoshop if you're going to get into that sort of thing, because if you don't do it right, it really shows. But if you know how to do it well, and you do it, and I do a few composites, and I do the odd sky replacement, particularly now because I don't have a lot to work with.
Yeah.
But what would you say the influences on you are from your sort of creative process? What are the things that make you go, oh, that's a good idea, I'll do that?
Yeah, look, I got into photography or landscape photography. I've sort of been taking photos all my life, and I look at my iPhone and I think I've got 120,000 photos sitting in the cloud because I take, so many of them. But David Rogers, so down on the Sapphire Coast, a mate of mine, so if I had to go for inspiration, he'd be the person who put the Sony in my hand and said, here, off you go. But inspiration, it's sort of, I actually look at like I was talking about before, the lady who's just her journey. So I go look at those sorts of people, and because I'm definitely in a creative slump at the moment, I go look at people that are completely not like me. So they don't take photos like I take.
Yeah.
Because my photos are fairly, they're fairly not generic at all, but I live in the eastern suburbs, so I spend a lot of time at Bronte, Bondi, Coogee, Maroubra, that kind of thing.
They're easy to get to. Yeah,
they're easy. So I look at photographers that are not like me, and then I go, right, I want to do that, or I want to try that, or I want to go there. And I had this long bucket list of places to visit this year in my motorhome, but alas.
Yep. So what sort of things are you aiming to express through your photography?
When I first started, I was just trying to get a good shot. Now I'm trying to learn to tell the story. I'm trying to get the composition for the story, and then which I don't necessarily put into words with my post, but in the background I've got it. So I've got this sort of catalogue of stuff that I've got, and then I really feel like the next step for us is our legacy that we leave of taking the photo but leaving no trace. So the conservation side of it. We're not trying to wave big green banners or anything like that, but you can anyone that you talk to can go and talk about places that are changed because of Instagram. And you'll know that. Go to the Blue Mountains, go to any of the beaches here, go to Diamond Bay, go to, down the south, just at Wedding Cake Rock, all of those sort of places. Our environment's changed because of Instagram. So are we responsible, or do we have a responsibility to try and change that for the better? I guess my next step from, hey, I can take some flow on a rock and it looks great with some nice sun.
Yep, got it.
So, that's kind of where I'm headed. So the story, the photo, the composition, and then what I can draw into that.
Yeah. So do you think where you live influences how you shoot, or has influenced how you shoot?
Look, it's certainly influenced my catalogue because,
there's always the Bronte Bondi.
Yeah, but I live a kilometre from Coogee Beach, so I'm regularly there. But I got and it's funny with this COVID thing and the lockdown, I got really tired and bored and low and creativity blocked because they were the places that I went all the time. And now, now I'd love to go and set my legs up at, my tripod up at Bronte and take some good photos. But I think that where I live is narrowed my view, but I think it's now really wanting to expand it. So I see all the other places where I want to go, where I want to be. I've got to travel to get to a waterfall.
Yeah.
I can get some great coastal shots, but I want to try Astro. I want to try do some more waterfalls. I want to do that sort of stuff. So that's planning. That's getting somewhere. So it limits you. I think where I live does limit me.
Yeah, interesting. So what do you think is probably the main, other than COVID at the moment, what's the limiting factor in terms of, that travel to and the planning of getting somewhere? I mean, I got to travel kind of anywhere to take any kind of shots, living in the middle of suburbia where I am, and to get to the coast there's about an hour to get to the nearest waterfall. There's probably one up near the Blue Mountains that I could get to in probably 3/4 of an hour. That's probably the closest thing that I think I could get to. So what do you think? I guess for me, I can set my alarm for 3 o'clock and still not know where I'm going to go and shoot.
Yeah,
and
I'm the same.
Decide as I'm going down the M4 or the M7 or whatever it is, depending on which, way I felt I should turn left or right coming out the driveway.
Yeah, it's and that's what it feels like living where we live. Like I was recently talking to a group of ladies in America, and they're in Utah and Colorado and Alaska and California and all these amazing places, and I said, oh, I'm bored, I'm in Sydney. And they all sort of went, you're in Sydney? That's amazing. That's the best thing ever. And I'm like, nah, it's boring. You can only take so many photos of the Opera House. You can only take so many photos of the Harbour Bridge. And you can only take so many photos of all these other places. So I feel like we live in a place that limits us, because to get to the next level for us is a journey. We have to go for a day or a weekend or not, it's, and I work full time. I've got kids, they've got sport, so the photography for me is a small part, albeit one of my favorite parts. So I think life limits it as well.
Yeah. I mean, if it's not your full-time gig, it's always going to have to come second best to family and work. I certainly know that feeling, and there are times when I'd love to be there, in front of that beautiful sunset that I can see out the window, but family demands or work demands, I've got to be somewhere else. So,
And haven't there been a lot through lockdown?
Yes.
Like walking the dogs at night and you just see this burn from you. It's like, oh my God, you just want to punch someone, but that's not going to help us either.
No, definitely not. So what sort of routine do you have when you go out to shoot? So you've come out the driveway, you've decided to turn left or right or whatever, and you've decided on,
right.
Yeah, you've decided on where you're going to go.
I think where I go in the morning depends on how late I've woken up. So do I need to get there in a minute, or can I take 4 or 5? Look, I turn up to where I'm going. Look, if I'm planning on going out, I generally look the night before at clear outside and windy, and sort of feel like what it's potentially going to be, and then I sort of decide where I want to be based on sea level or tide or where the sun, where it looks like it's going to be.
Sure.
And I go and I just sort of sit and look for a while. So when I go for a sunrise, I do try and get there well before, so that it's dark. I'm usually the first person there, and I can just sort of feel it to see what the looks like the sun's going to do, or whether there's clouds or not clouds, whether this looks like it's going to be cover, whether there's surf or no surf. And I just sort of take it all in, and that's part of my process, is just that absorbing and feeling. And again, it's not woo-woo or weird, it's just enjoying doing that. And then getting to a point where I feel like I've got a shot.
Yep.
And where that's going to be and what's that going to look like. And then I start taking those early, and I start getting long exposures, and then they slowly cut coming, and then you stick a filter in, and then you go, oh, this is a disaster, and then you move spots.
So has your routine changed, I guess, from where you started out to what you do now?
Definitely. So now I consider the composition and the story more. I used to go and try and take 30 different comps and just move around and hope that when I got home, one would work.
Yeah, throw a lot against the wall and see what sticks, yeah. Exactly.
Now I consider it more, I consider the heights of the tripod more. I consider the angle. I consider, we were just talking, before about the pano, the 5-shot sort of pano, whether that's going to work. Or so you think about that aspect more, and trying to get it better in camera than taking it back. And my editing skills are there. They're not great, but I'm learning all the time thanks to, YouTube University is amazing. But so I try and do that more in the pre-planning, and I think you've got to get there earlier to get that.
Yeah, right. What about processing? When you mentioned that you didn't, you don't claim to be a Photoshop expert. I don't know who is, but
no, there are some out there. They have lots of tutorials that you can pay a lot for. No, look,
there's a few freebies out there too, which I've taken gratefully.
Yes, definitely. I use Lightroom. I probably do 80% of my edits in Lightroom, which are mostly highlights, making the light right. I stay away from vibrance and saturation. Don't go near them. Don't go near clarity and texture. They're horrible. And then I can't seem to ever get right dust. I've got terrible camera dust spots on my camera because I can't clean them for anything. So, but I take those out in Photoshop. That's one thing I do know how to do in Photoshop, because I don't think Lightroom does that as well as Photoshop does. And I shoot with a Sony, so I find Sony's very blue. So
okay,
you shoot with a Canon, I think, from memory.
Yeah. I like the blues in the Canon. To be honest, it's one of the reasons why I went with Canon. Was I actually quite like the way that it rendered blues.
Yeah, so I find Sony's very cold. So I think so when you get into Photoshop, you feel like you can just sort of bring the warmth back into it a little bit to probably where everybody else is. So Sony's an amazing, I think the
Oh, the dynamic range on it's fabulous.
Incredible. Yeah. But I feel the colour in, say, Fuji or Canon is far better than Sony. So you've got to play with that a little bit and just bring it back to the warmth, which I do in Photoshop. And then I get it back to Lightroom to do the sort of local adjustments, which I'm only just learning. But that's kind of it. If I spend more than 20 minutes on a photo, I feel like I've spent too long because I've probably killed it. But yeah.
Yeah, depending on what if I'm getting into composites and things, I can be spending 4, 5, 6 hours on a shot. But I would love to. I don't do it a lot, and I usually don't do it all in one sitting either. It tends to be an hour, and then get up and go and do something else for a bit. And usually, because you come to for me anyway, I come to not so much a creative block, or it might be a technical block where I'm just sort of sitting there. Okay, how do I do that? And usually I find if I walk away from it, think about it a bit, I'll go, yep, worst comes to worst, I'll sit and watch some YouTube videos to work it out. But I usually find though that I can nut it out once I take a break and then come back to it. That most shots though, I'm kind of with you. The one that I posted yesterday literally took me. I'd be surprised if it took 10 minutes. Yeah. But most shots probably about the 20-minute, half-hour mark is fairly standard.
I just it's funny. You hear people talking about luminosity masks and all these amazing things, which I'm sure would take my shots to that whole next level that I'm just trying to get to. But I'd love to understand them. I'm a mere lawyer, which is not very technological.
I'll be happy to offer you a tutorial on it, and it really helps though if you've got some of the panels that help you create them, because creating them manually is an absolute fiddle. But
I don't have any of those panels, so I might tap you on the shoulder for that, because I'm not.
Yeah, so there are a couple of free ones which do some basics. I've got one from Jimmy McIntyre, Raya Pro, and he's built a fairly amazing one. There's Lemenzia, who does that. Greg Benz does Lemenzia. There's half a dozen others out there as well. But if you have one of those panels, and as I say, if you start off with the free one, see how you go. But if you're into sort of playing around with that, the reason why I do it is I don't have a Sony, so I don't have that amazing dynamic range on the Canon. It's good, and for certain lighting conditions, it's great. But when you get that real broad contrast between, the sun after it's popped above the horizon and some deep shadows, the Canon just can't dredge enough out of the shadows without noise for the shorter exposures. So you've got to go longer to get the detail out of the shadows if you want it. So I tend to do that bracketing, and then using luminosity masks to blend them together and give you a what I aim for is kind of the range that the eye can see. So if you were the thing that I'm trying to do with most of my photography, is give someone the feeling that they're actually standing there looking at the scene. Occasionally I'll do something a bit weird and wonderful, but mostly it's trying to represent the scene as I saw it. To be honest, the thing I find with the luminosity masks is that you get so much more control over that tonal range, and you can adjust. When you mentioned selective adjustments, you can adjust increments of highlights or colour or contrast specifically using those masks, and it makes a real difference to the way that you can make the image look. I mean, a lot of my contrast adjustments, they're done selectively, so I normally using Jimmy McIntyre's Rio Pro, I create a set of luminosity masks which are set for the brightest highlights, a tone or two down from the brightest highlights, 2 tones of mid-tones, 2 tones of shadows. And then what you can do is you use a curves adjustment layer to tweak, and sometimes it's a very subtle tweak, sometimes it's a little bit more dramatic, but mostly...
Isn't that the more longer you take photos, the smaller the adjustments become?
Tends to be, yeah. I mean, I was talking to somebody the other day, and everyone sort of starts with the saturation and clarity and everything up to 100. But to be honest, I don't think I've ever really done that, because I've never liked the way that those sorts of shots look. But you do tend to. I think as you learn your craft and you put in the yards to understand it, and you then understand processing. And for me, there's actually a really good one, F64 Academy. Yep. His stuff, what's his name? Something Rudis. I can't remember his first name, so apologies if he's listening. I doubt he will. But you never know, maybe in the future. But he really has a deep understanding of what the settings in Photoshop are doing to each pixel, and a deep understanding of colour and how colour actually works. And he uses colour wheels in his tutorials quite a bit. And I've just learned a massive amount, in the last probably 6 months out of watching some of his videos and understanding, what some of these subtle changes can actually make. I posted one tonight, actually, which came from one of his videos, which is a different way of creating black and white using a gradient map.
Your Barangaroo shot?
Yeah, that's the one. So it creates a gradient map, then uses a hue and saturation layer under that, adjustment layer under that, and then what's the other one? Selective colour. And what you're doing is you're making subtle changes to the reds, the blues, the greens, the cyans, the magentas, and so forth. And you've got absolutely total control over how your blacks, greys, whites actually blend together. And so if you want to highlight something that's in the yellows range, because that's usually the brightest, you change your sliders a little bit, and then using the selective colour, you can actually change how much cyan is in the yellows or how much magenta is in the yellows. And so, and this is all based off the fact that, at a pixel level, each of those values around the colour and the saturation and the brightness or luminosity, all of those values change based on these controls that you use, and it's just makes a complete difference to the way that you process black and white. Because the way I used to do it was you'd hit the black and white button and then change the contrast a bit,
I started out with black and white photography at school and going in and developing it myself and thinking about working the color charts on that is just it doesn't the whole different world.
It until I saw it, it didn't make a lot of sense to me. But having sat through it and practiced it and had to play around with it, it just gives you total control. And I'm a bit of a control freak, so I like more control, and I like that fine grain control where you can get right down to move that to the right nth of a pixel, and that will give you exactly what you want. And to me, that's where you start to really understand how light works and how, I mean, there may be some people look at that and they go, oh, it's rubbish. It's no good. The sky's too black or whatever, but, it looked good to me at the end of the day.
Yeah,
and that's all that matters.
Personal.
So you mentioned learning black and white in high school. What's your earliest photography memory?
Oh, it would be that. So I've always had a camera in my hand. I did photography for the HSC way back in the 80s and 90s.
It's all right. Safe space here.
Yeah, I was a boarder at school, so there was a dark room, and it sounds ridiculous. I used to go take photos of people's eyes and then go develop them, because the eyes had so much. Now I know that it's dynamic range, because there's the white and the dark, and there's everything in between in an eye.
Yeah.
So you would develop these photos, and I'd just have these eyes everywhere. It was really weird, but and so I've always had cameras. I remember my first digital camera. I think it was a 64 megabyte card from Sony that went into this huge, big, silly Sony camera that I bought in China when I was on holiday there.
Yep.
I don't know, 25 years ago. Or maybe not 20 years ago or whatever. But so there's always been a camera, and then it's developed for drones and landscape and et cetera. But it's been a long journey of not understanding or appreciating what we had in our hand.
Yeah. So when you get out to travel, how far do you go?
I'm fortunate I get to travel for work a lot. So I travel overseas to Asia and New Zealand, around Australia a lot. And I love traveling, so my family and I travel quite a lot. So, yeah, it's interesting. I had all these plans of where I was going to go and travel. We had Europe last year cancelled, and Japan for cherry blossoms last year cancelled, and Tasmania last year cancelled, and, all these things. So traveling is a bug, and it's a expensive hobby, but I can't wait to get back there doing it. Work is
nor can I
now.
So is the plan to crank up the motorhome and get out around Australia, or
absolutely,
is that just a standby in case you can't get on a plane?
No, well, we were just talking about that, cooking dinner tonight. I literally turned around and I said, the minute that Gladys lifts that restriction, we are jumping in the home and we are driving somewhere for a week or two, and I don't care where, as long as it's not here. After I don't know whether, anyway, after listening to a couple of your podcasts, getting out to Broken Hill would be a great idea. And
yeah, I'm planning a trip out to visit Adam as well.
Yep. So
I think he might be getting a lot of visitors.
He might. We actually picked up, funny enough, we bought the motorhome in December last year, thinking that this was the big year, right? And we bought it in Adelaide, so we drove it home. So we came through Broken Hill and Cobar and back through that way. And we were going to go to Menindee and Mungo, but it just didn't work out because it sort of didn't work with the 4 days that we had. And so I've been desperate to get back there, but now I'm ultra desperate to get back. So I think that's where I'm going first.
Brilliant. No, I think getting out and about is on everyone's checklist in Sydney at the moment.
Look, we did Tasmania at Easter in the motorhome, which was great. Nice. The weather was terrible.
So you drove down and then caught the ferry across, or?
Yep, which was awesome. And we did in January, we did Sapphire Coast and around all that area, which was great as well. So a couple of weeks down there, and then we've been pretty much shoved in a box since then.
Yeah, haven't we all? So what's the best thing about being a photographer?
One of the things, I suppose, for me, again, it's I could go do yoga. I could go do. I'm not very good. I'm not very flexible, so I can't do Pilates or yoga. But to me, it's that self time. I guess I use meditation as a word, but it's that the ability to just forget everything else.
Yeah.
Today's society is manic. My work is manic. My family is manic. So to just have that space, and then to me, it's the community of the photography. So it's not just In Focus Women, which is an amazing community, and I've met so many amazing people that both inspire and hopefully we inspire a little bit for. It's the broader community as well. It's I've got these people from all over the world who I talk to about their shots or my shots, and I would never have met those people had it not been for taking a shot of some landscape and posting it and communicating it. So it's the bringing together of the community, and it's the ability of escaping reality.
Yep. What's the worst thing?
The future of some sort of message about what we leave behind us.
Yeah, great. What's the worst thing about being a photographer?
Oh, 3 a.m.
Or a landscape photographer.
3 a.m., I tell you. It's the hours, because the best shots are before sun, after sun, before dusk, after dusk, and then in the middle of the night. You don't take it. I mean, I don't think you take a good photo at midday.
Well, it depends on where you are. I've seen some nice ones around the Rockies and that, but not too many around the beaches, unless you're doing a tourism ad.
Yes, well, that's true. Or if you're in Iceland and it's the middle of winter and midday is the only light that you get.
Well, that's it, yeah.
I feel like it's the hours. I feel like it's the sometimes the best shots are also in the worst conditions so I don't think that a clear sky is necessarily the greatest time to go out and shoot. So you sometimes want rain, you sometimes want lightning, you sometimes want storms, you want big surf, so it's the conditions, it's wet feet, it's cleaning gear, it's cleaning salt off tripods, it's all of those things. But I guess that's part of the process which we love.
Yeah.
Otherwise we wouldn't do it, right?
No, well, that's it. You wouldn't do it if you didn't love it. So what about horror stories? Have you lost any gear? Have you?
Yep. Have you been to Ivor Probably.
Yes, a couple of times. Yeah, I haven't actually shot there, but I've done the walk around the rocks down there at Coogee.
So I've been there a couple of times, and I remember being there, and I had my beautiful camera on my beautiful tripod, and a wave came up and knocked me and my tripod and my camera into the rock pool. So we all get out and we're dripping wet, and I'm sitting here not sure what to do with my camera and tripod that's very, very wet and salty and whatever. But I mean, I suppose that's the horror story. I've had a few incidences with kangaroos late at night or early in the morning, but they're nothing exciting. We miss them all. But I think being knocked off a rock with a wave was probably, I've had wet feet. Everyone's had wet feet and they've had close calls and they've run back from waves. But actually being knocked off was pretty mind-opening about what you need to do so I take a little bit longer to watch the surf before I go.
Yeah. The thing is, there's always one wave which is bigger than the others, and I've been there. I've luckily never been knocked over, but you go out, you watch the waves for a while. Yeah, it looks good, and depends on whether you're on a rising tide as well. If the tide's coming in and you just get that one wave that's a little bit bigger and comes up a lot faster and a lot nastier than you expected. I've wet a lot of gear that way, but I've luckily never been in a position where I've fallen over.
And they say never turn your back on the ocean.
Oh, definitely not. No.
But occasionally you've got to take your eyes off it because you want to just check what's going on and flick through a few photos and see how it's going, and then that's when disaster happens. But I think my lesson from that was I went and got appropriate footwear for rock, going out
Absolutely.
on rock.
Yeah, that's an absolute must. And anyone listening that wants to go and do photography on a rock shelf beside the sea, get yourself proper footwear, because if you're out there and you don't have it, I've seen photographers and fishermen out there in thongs.
That's what I was wearing. I was about to say, don't wear thongs, people.
Yeah, or flip-flops for the international listeners.
Sandals if you're from New Zealand.
Yeah, if you're wearing them, they're not appropriate footwear, and
it's a disaster.
Yeah, it is a disaster waiting to happen. Yeah, and I know it's interesting. You see a lot of the advertisements for people that do rock fishing and so forth, to wear life vests. And to be honest, I've never seen a photographer do it, but you're sometimes standing in the same locations as these rock fishermen. And it's probably not a bad idea. I've never thought of doing it myself until I started to see some of those ads.
I reckon there's a couple of occasions where I have thought, you know what, getting down there in that would be unbelievable. You would get the best shots, but it's unsafe and you don't. But then if you think, okay, if I've got a life vest, I probably would go do that. So I think now we've said it, I guarantee people will start putting life vests on and go and getting photos that we wish we were taking.
Probably. I'll stand well back. I don't mind getting a bit wet. You can't do seascaping without getting wet, or waterfalls without getting wet. But I'm also very much not about getting into a position where I can't get out of it. And wearing a life vest, as I say, it's probably not a bad idea in some of the places I go, but I definitely try not to get close enough that I'm likely to get washed in.
I think the closest apart from, believe it or not, closest to home I ever rode was probably down Horsehead Rock at Camel Rock.
Yeah.
When you walk around there and you think, okay, if I'm going to walk around rather than do that top walk where you go down the steep cliff to get down to Horsehead, I'm going to go around the rock from Camel Rock. I probably think that's a time I would go, it's not a bad idea to have some sort of protection for if I'm, because
it's not too bad at low tide, but you've really got to time your run and you shoot and know that you're either climbing up that cliff or you're going to wait for the tide to change back. If you spend too long shooting there. And I know some people that have done a full night. From tide to tide, or even a full day tide to tide.
That little area is.
Oh yeah, very, very, very secluded. The time I was shooting down there was this old bloke down there, and he kind of looked like he lived on the beach.
Wow, well, it's not a bad beach to live on.
Yeah, but it was just one of those unusual people. He wasn't there, wasn't fishing, wasn't there with a boat, wasn't there with a camera. So I don't know what he was up to. He was probably just enjoying the view. But exactly. As I say, he kind of looked like he lived there. But
when you think about that little couple of 100 metre patch, you've got Horsehead Rock, Camel Rock. Some of the most beautiful inland waterways, just going up on the drone and looking back that way.
Yeah.
Just in Gulaga, Mount Gulaga in the background. You just can't go wrong. I think that.
No, absolutely. That whole stretch, pretty much from Narooma all the way down to Eden. And there's places even further down than Eden that are just as nice as well. Yeah. I mean, it's a top spot. I really envy Davey Rogers living down there. I've got a place up on the Central Coast, and that I'm renting out. But that's sort of like the retirement plan, is to go and sit up there, and then
mine's the house
5
next
minute
door
walk
to
to the
Davies.
beach.
Yeah, mine's the house next door to Davies. I keep telling him I'm going to get down there and build next to him, and he's like, oh. So, yeah, that's my retirement plan. With a motorhome, I rock up there regularly.
Just park on his lawn.
Oh, we have. Don't worry.
Sure. So what tips do you have for someone who's just starting out in landscape photography?
Oh, goodness. I think the first tip that I wish someone told me would have been do it for yourself and not for the pleasure of other people. So take a lot. So shoot always and often and everything you can to start with, and do it for yourself. Don't ask people for feedback. So constructive criticism is amazing and it's fantastic, but shoot what you want to shoot, not shoot what you think other people want you to shoot or what you think is going to be popular.
Definitely.
If you just flow with that, then it really stems to being true to yourself about what you want to shoot, and it also allows you to maintain that happiness again, as much as we can be happy in COVID. But I guess that would be my if someone said that to me.
That's great. Great answer, that. If you weren't a photographer, what would you be?
Well, I'm a lawyer, so I wouldn't be that. If I couldn't be a lawyer, I'd be a photographer. I actually think that I would be a sports journalist.
Okay.
I love sport. So if I could be a sports photographer, that would be amazing. But I think I would
need a big budget for the lenses for that, though.
Yeah, I know. Crazy. I think I'd be a sports journalist.
Oh, nice.
Not a professional sports person, but that seems like so much hard work.
A lot of training. Yeah. Mind you, when you think about the hours that you put into photography and all the rest of it, the train, it's not physical, but You
think about all the time and energy that you spend on YouTube videos and editing and mistakes, and then out in the field, and then researching gear that you might want to get, which lenses and all of that sort of stuff. We're probably on par with a professional athlete.
Pretty much, yeah. I reckon I've got my 10,000 hours up.
Oh, for sure.
All right, you know what's coming now is the last and most important question. So, what's the answer? Pineapple on pizza or not?
Oh, absolutely. And I think everybody said that so far. So
so far on the ones that have been released,
there's some ones coming. Okay, I'm sorry.
There's a couple that there's a couple that I've had that were a bit against it, but that's okay. It's a democracy.
It is, and it's a great question. But there you go. I've got a question for you.
Okay.
Violet crumble or crunchy?
Oh, violet crumble, probably because I got into that before I got into crunchy.
Yeah, right answer. There you go. There's another question you can start asking people.
Definitely. I'll put it on the list. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, Sarina, and it's been absolutely fantastic. I really appreciate the time that you and all the other guests have been putting into doing this with me. So it's great hearing about what you do and how you do what you do. Where can people find your work?
Well, mine is pretty straightforward. It's Sarina Jackson on Instagram, Facebook. I think that's pretty much where I am, and the web, and then In Focus Women, which is again on the web, Facebook, and Instagram. So they're the two places. My work's not necessarily on In Focus Women. My work's on my personal stuff, but my passion project, which is definitely what I think is way bigger and more important than my personal stuff, is In Focus Women.
Fantastic. All right. Well, brilliant talking to you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for listening to Landscape Photography World. I hope you enjoyed the show, and keep listening because there'll be some great guests joining me in upcoming episodes. You can find my work and this podcast at grantswinburnphotography.com. I'm also on Instagram, Twitter and Facebook. I'm Grant Swinburne and hope to see you out shooting soon.